What next? That's the question still echoing after the recent hefty exchange of statements between Pakistan and the United States. ISI's link with the Haqqani network is something that has often given rise to an uncomfortable exchange of words between the two countries. For example, when Admiral Millen calls Haqqanis a veritable arm of the ISI, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Hina Rabbani Kar points out that Haqqani network has been CIA's blue-eyed boy for many years. And now that Pakistan's Prime Minister Yusuf Raza Gilani has called for an all-parties conference on Thursday, many wonder if there are more opportunities or greater threats for the Pakistan-United States relationship in the current disagreement. Tonight on the platform, we will continue with the discussion that began on the show yesterday. But today, to take part in the conversation, I have with me a panel of two distinguished guests. Dr Moeed Pirzada, who is a popular journalist, well-known TV commentator, and is also the Director, World Affairs for Pakistan Television. Welcome, Dr. Pirzada, once again.
Thank you, Waqas. Thanks for inviting.
Nice to have you. And sitting next to him, another familiar face here on the platform is Mr. Tanveer Ahmed Khan. He's the former Foreign Secretary. Welcome, Mr. Khan, once again on the platform. Let's cross over now live to Washington, D.C., where my colleague from Voice of America, Kaukab Farshori, is present with his guests. Hello, Kaukab.
Hello, Waqas, and thank you very much, and welcome viewers to Voice of America's Washington studio. I'm your host, Kaukab Farshori, and as Waqas mentioned, tonight we'll continue the discussion on the fallout of Admiral Mike Millen's accusations of ISI's support to the Haqqani network and what it means for the US-Pakistan relationship. Joining me to discuss this are two very distinguished guests. In our Los Angeles studio is Christain Whitten, a former State Department advisor and currently a principal at DC International Advisory. And here with me in the studio is, in Washington studio, is Dr. Joseph Olmert, adjunct professor at the School of International Service at Amercian University. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us.
Pleasure, yeah.
But before I go to my guests for this discussion, let me set it up with a soundbite from Mark Toner, who is the State Department spokesperson, and take a listen at what he said yesterday.
We recognize very clearly that this is an area of concern. We've identified that. We've raised it at the highest levels with the Pakistanis. We've said, we need to take action against the Haqqani network. And we're committed at this point to working constructively with them to do that. We recognize that this is a clear threat to our security in Afghanistan.
Dr. Olmert, now the way the United States is speaking, not just the State Department spokesman, Admiral Millen, the Secretary of Defense Panetta, they're speaking with absolute certainty that there is something. Pakistan's ISI is supporting the Haqqani network. Why do you think they're so certain about it?
Well, first of all, I must tell you that I was absolutely struck, when I heard all that, because it's not usual for something like that to be in the public domain to start with. But then, the statement that really made me very surprised was the comments made by David Plouffe, who is the political strategic advisor of the president on domestic affairs, but he appeared on CNN on Sunday with Candy Crowley, and he talked at great lengths about this Pakistani situation with great certainty and great vigor. And it was clear to me it was like in advance prepared so that he could make the comments. So it shows to me that there is something here that the administration wants to send a message. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure that I understand what the message is, because it doesn't do good to any party or all these public exchanges which are tending to become acrimonious. They go on and they create badwill, between allies, basically.
And this is the point that Pakistan often raises, and it says that it's better to talk in private rather than making these public accusations. And on top of that, Pakistan wants proof. The certainty with which the US administration is coming forth with these accusations, do you think they have some proof?
I would imagine that they have the proof, but I doubt whether they will have to present it, definitely not in public, and that's exactly why I'm again surprised by all this. That's not the way to, from my experience, it has never been like that I can recall. I can't recall an incident like that between allies, and that is the surprising element about all that. I would imagine that they have some proof. What is it? If they want to present it to the public, they will, but I would doubt it very much, because usually intelligence of that kind is not being presented in public. But the fact that the accusations were made in public means to me that is a political issue here.
Let me go to Los Angeles and ask Mr. Whitten this question. Mr. Whitten, Dr. Olmert pretty much echoed what Pakistan has said on this issue of publicly saying these things. Now, the counter argument could be if the United States leadership does not take its own people into confidence and in the future take some strict action against the United States public, may be taken by surprise and say, well, till yesterday Pakistan was your good friend, your ally, buddy, you never raised anything in public, and now you are talking about taking action against it. So which strategy or which line of action you support more, saying these things in public or keeping them in private meetings?
Well, Kaukab, I'd say I feel as I think the administration does, which is just a sense of frustration. You wouldn't have the State Department, which often specializes in understatement and milquetoast statements out there saying this, and you wouldn't have Admiral Mullen, who himself is very risk-averse and puts great importance, frankly, on things going as smoothly as possible with Pakistan in order to supply our forces in Afghanistan. You wouldn't have them out there saying this if they didn't feel quite comfortable with whatever they are seeing about the ISI's involvement with the Haqqani network and the attacks, the recent attacks in Kabul. So I think there's a growing sense in Washington in both Democrat and Republican circles that there's been a decade now of this quiet pressure that we've supposedly been exerting on Pakistan. So this notion that allies should discuss these matters privately, that we should privately register our concerns, that greater engagement with Pakistan will lead it to cease its support, what's suspected to be its support of Islamist terrorists. But that doesn't appear to be working. In fact, this latest attack, it's not really abstract. It's pretty direct, at least if you take Admiral Mullen at his word, and many in Congress will be inclined to do that. I mean, he said that the Haqqani network is an arm of the ISI, and that arm just struck the U.S. Embassy directly in Kabul. So it's sort of gotten to the point where it's so obvious, apparently, and there's so much frustration that this is boiled out into public.
And Christain, another point that's raised in Pakistan is the issue of shifting the blame. Pakistan, a lot of opinion makers and a lot of op-ed writers in Pakistan say the ultimate responsibility to bring peace and stability is of the United States and its allies, its NATO allies, and the United States, after 10 years of, from their quote-unquote perspective, failure, is now trying to scapegoat Pakistan by saying all these things before it gets out eventually. Do you see any merit in this perspective?
Not really. You know, if you look at where the focus of fighting in Afghanistan has been, especially, you know, it's been some months now, but again, the location of bin Laden inside Pakistan, the fact that there is this broad part of Pakistan that does not appear to be under the strong control of the central government and has, as a result, become a haven to people who would, you know, seek to destabilize Afghanistan. So I think, at least in Washington, there's a broad perception that it's a plausible threat from Pakistan and that Pakistan has not done enough.
On this question of Pakistan not doing enough, let me go to Islamabad and ask Dr. Pirzada. Dr. Pirzada, I'll quote from this Time magazine article written by former Middle East CIA field officer Bob Baer, who says Haqqanis are an indispensable party to peace settlement in Afghanistan and a vehicle for securing Pakistan's interest in that country after the United States withdraws in 2014. Now, if this indeed is the case, that Pakistan is looking at the Haqqani network as its strategic asset for future, then don't you think that it's doing it at the cost of antagonizing the United States of America and its allies? Do you think the potential benefits are far outweighed by the risks that Pakistan is allegedly taking by adopting this policy?
Kaukab, first let me clarify this thing that I do not speak on behalf of the government of Pakistan, neither the Pakistani military. I am looking at the situation purely from an analytical point of view. And I will agree with Professor Joseph Olmert that such tensions that exist between Islamabad and Washington should have been best dealt behind the scenes. And we know on the question of the Haqqani network, for instance, these tensions have been simmering for more than a year. As a journalist, I attended the last round of the strategic dialogue in Washington, and subsequently afterwards there was in October 2010. And this tension that Pakistan should actually militarize and send its military, another 30-40,000 troops into the North Waziristan to man it, to post it, to engage the Haqqanis, which are actually Afghan Taliban, so that they can ease the pressure on the US forces or the NATO forces in Afghanistan, and the disagreement and the denial from the Pakistani side. I mean, the rejection from the Pakistani side that we are not in a position to do it and we will not do it was very much there. Right now, the tensions which we are looking at is that with the comments of Admiral Mullen, these differences, which were always there, which we knew for the last 18 months were there, have been brought into public in such a way that now the American side is saying that it is not that the Pakistanis are resisting the American pressure not to take action on the Haqqani network, but they are in fact part and parcel of the Haqqani network, and there is absolutely no evidence that Haqqani network is in a way a part of the ISI or is a veritable arm of the ISI. We can talk about this, but I think we need to identify where the situation stands. The Obama administration, the American side, wants Pakistan to take certain kind of actions against the Haqqani network, which Pakistanis have been resisting, and they have given huge number of reasons for resisting that. If you ask me later, I can explain why they're not willing to take action against the Haqqani network. I think this is how we should actually go about it.
Right. And to bring into the conversation, Mr. Khan, there's been strong reaction to these statements of allegation recently in Pakistan. You know the kind of diplomatic activity that's going on. Pakistan is looking for friends elsewhere also. But just today, the Senate Standing Committee on Defense had a meeting, and its chairman after the meeting said that the US allegations would only strengthen the terrorist networks. Do you think this statement is significant? What's the message?
Before I come to your question, specific question, let me just spend a minute, half a minute, on the discussion so far. Now, as we said, these grievances, complaints, they have been simmering for more than a year, particularly in the context of North Waziristan. Now, what is the scene now? The scene is that in a very short period of time, General Kiani and General Admiral Mullen, and then Pakistan's young Foreign Minister Hinakar, and the Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, they talk to each other, and if you add the time that they spend together, it's more than 7 hours. Now, my lifelong experience of diplomacy, of statecraft, is that if you have such conversations, then you at least wait for the interlocutors to get back to their principal base. In this case, Islamabad, report to their principals, which would be the Prime Minister and the President. And then you have an ambassador there who has unprecedented access, I mean, who is in and out of the top offices all the time, who in fact had already said something to that effect on Radio Pakistan, to be more precise. Now, instead of that, we see Admiral Mullen really launch a huge diatribe in the Armed Services Committee. Now, my own initial reaction was, well, let's not overreact. The gentleman had invested a great deal of time in Pakistan. He said he'd met Kiani for more than 25 times. And quite a few of these conversations would have focused on Haqqanis and North Waziristan and so on and so forth. And he's about to step down. He's about to finish his career.
Almost in a day.
In a day. And so I could understand the element of pique. But then within 24 hours, that pique became the policy. It was echoed and re-echoed and amplified from several other quarters, a process which has not come to an end. I mean, I'll just sort of add that in a second. Now, that was different. And I speak in sorrow rather than in anger, because it posed a question, why is this orchestrated campaign being launched